Welcome to the Lighthouse podcast series. Lighthouse is a talent development program of FOTODOK where 10 emerging photographers have worked on a new project. My name is Jennifer Munslag. I am the moderator of this series, and in this episode, I will talk to Ana Núñez, and we will talk about something that is considered, I think, an everyday object, but it tells us more about who we are than we would expect. A potato. Ana, how are you?
Hi, Jennifer.
Everything well this morning, this day?
Yeah, ready to explore potatoes world.
Yes, indeed, because we are going to talk about potatoes, and I would have never made the connection like a potato could tell me more about who I am or anybody that I know. So I think this is a very interesting, this will be a very interesting talk. But at first, I would like to start at you being an artist, a photographer. Could you tell us a little bit about you and the way you work?
I've been living the last period between Colombia and Europe, and this definitely has influenced my work and how those realities like the European and Latin America convert in my life have influenced the way I work. And I start interrogating myself about identity and the politics and also their complexities, often marked by the collective memory and also like the cultural heritage. So I studied photography in Spain, then I moved to Colombia when I did a postgraduate in photography, and I graduated last year at the KBK, the Master of Photography in Society, where I started working with potatoes because it's part of my master thesis.
How did you start, or how did you get to the potatoes? Because do you always photograph like things in nature, or is it normally people, and this happened to cross your path?
So actually, I wanted to use something like, had like some, I chose potatoes because there is this analogy between them and myself. So we both traveled from Latin America to Europe, and I think both processes in potatoes and myself are influenced by this acceptance and adaptation. So I thought, like, first of all, based on my own experience, could be a way to then address other topics like migration, colonialism, and other things. So I chose potato because it has this ordinary power. It crosses everyone, and everyone has eaten potato or has a potato, and a way to talk about many things. So that's why I wanted to continue building this bridge between Latin America and Europe, and I found like potato could be a useful tool.
So we're not per se talking about a specific potato, because there are also many potatoes. You have the red skin, you have the iets kruimelig, which crumble more, you have the sturdier one. Or is that also part of, saying because people are also different?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most interesting things of the potato, because it's something like it's been adapted to every place it arrives. So originally it's from Latin America, but actually like it moved and adapt, and now it's considered kind of like identity signal in many places. So like actually it's called sometimes like the perfect migrant. And it really changed and adapt to a new soil, a new gastronomic culture and climate and so on.
Yeah, because within your project called Potato Story, or Cooking Potato Stories, you have interviewed people or had conversation with people, and you also brought us a few of these conversations. And let's listen to the first one.
Ik ben opgegroeid op het platteland van Pennsylvania, met aardappels als hoofdgerecht. Goedkoop en lekker vullend. Gebakken, gefrituurd tot french fries, gepureerd, zoete aardappels, hash browns als ontbijt, shepherd's pie, aardappelsalade, aardappelsoep. Aardappels waren ons dagelijks brood vroeger. Al wist ik toen nog niet dat ze niet eens voorkomen in de Bijbel. In 1993 ben ik met mijn ouders naar Nederland verhuisd. En in 2007 kwam ik eindelijk na 14 jaar in Nederland in aanmerking voor de Nederlandse nationaliteit. In die tijd werd onder de VVD-regering bedacht dat de naturalisatieceremonie wat feestelijker moest worden. Op de dag dat ik aan de beurt was, verzamelden we in een grote zaal in het stadshuis met een paar honderd opgetogen migranten, voor de zekerheid, allemaal uitgedost met nette kleding en glimmende schoenen. Uitgestald in de vorm van een kaart van Amsterdam lagen in de hoek duizenden enigszins vormloze delftblauwe beeldjes, zo groot als een vuist. De ceremonieleester legde uit dat we een cadeau kregen van de gemeente, een kunstwerk van Ni Haifeng. We mochten er allemaal eentje uitkiezen en mee naar huis nemen, als aandenken van deze bijzondere dag. Toen ik dichterbij kwam, zag ik allemaal blauw-witte aardappels, gegoten in porselein. Ik heb er eentje uitgekozen. En er zat een kleine paspoort bij, waarin Ni Haifeng uitlegde dat zowel de aardappel als Delftsblauw dan wel typisch Nederlands zijn, maar allebei niet vandaan komen. Delftsblauw uit China en de aardappel geïmporteerd uit Zuid-Amerika al eeuwen geleden. Ter afsluiting van de ceremonie moesten we samen het volkslied zingen. Er kwam op de beamer een PowerPoint met de Nederlandse vlag en de tekst van het Wilhelmus onderdoor scrollen in karaoke-stijl. Sinds ik de kerk heb verlaten, is uit volle borst in groepsverband zingen voor mij een balladeactiviteit. Schoorvoetend deed ik toch mee voor het papiertje, zodat ik in Europa kon komen en gaan.
I would like to, before we talk maybe on the same topic of this construction of identity and the role of potato, I would like to play another one from other plays, so maybe we can use both to discuss.
Of course, yes. Let's go to the second story.
It is a cold winter day in China. I came to visit Fina, an 83-year-old friend who has dedicated her entire life to work on the farm. It's 9 in the morning, and the ice that covers the landscape like a white sheet has not melted yet. We are sitting on the opposite sides of the long bench that surrounds the fire, sipping the puchero coffee that she had recently prepared. Whenever I return to Galicia, I visit her. I am fascinated by her story, a personal narrative that Fina always describes with a huge smile on her lips. I have not finished my coffee when she says, "We have to prepare the caldo." She gets up and walks to the horreo. She comes back with a handful of potatoes in her hands. I slide down the bench until our elbows meet, and I receive the knife she gives me to peel the potatoes. With the first cut, Fina exclaims, "Such a beautiful potatoes." This year, the harvest has been very good. When the harvest is not good, we do not have enough potatoes for the whole year, and we have to buy them. But I like ours better. The ones from the supermarket come from León. Then I ask her, "Fina, and where do ours come from?" She gets up, puts the potato skin in a black bucket to feed the pigs, looks at me and answers, "Ours are from here."
Okay, so we just listened to two different potato stories. And could you tell us a little bit about what we just listened to?
So, we have listened to both stories, like in different countries, in different places, but actually they demonstrate how potato has transformed into this identity signal. And I think it's important to note, the potato was native from Latin America, and this native it doesn't mean it's something authentic or original. Actually, the native is the creation of this colonial state, so it divides between the colonizer and the colonized.
Yes.
But the paradoxical thing here is how the potato has been itself colonize our stomachs, colonize our food, our cultural identity, and it's nowadays something that everyone wants to consider on their own.
Yes. And where did you discover that the potato is, as you maybe stated before, that it has this role? How did it come about for you that you noticed, hey, actually this is it's more than just a potato, how everybody views it and what it tells us and how we approach it?
Well, maybe in my personal case, because like this conversation we just listened was like the starting point of the project. When my neighbor, they say to me like, ours are from here. And actually my partner is from Latin America, and we had like kind of integration problems, not problems, but it's difficult for them maybe to adapt. And when I said to them like, look, the potato is from Latin America. So actually it was like kind of excuse to get into another topic.
Okay.
As soon as you move it to a different context, of course, for instance, now I'm working in Ireland in the potato, and it moves us to another context of their political and social context. So the ability of the potato is like, as soon as you place it in one context, it moves somehow, like you can dig, taking the potato, and then you will find things to discover.
So it's also actually a great conversation starter, or at least you can go into a deeper conversation via this object that seems very simple, very nice, but it allows you to go deep. And is there a certain aim you have with this project, the potato stories, or cooking the potato stories?
So as I said before we listened the first story, I think like stories have a tremendous power on how we build ourselves individually and as a collective. But always behind these stories, there are certain politics and subjectivity. So I think through this collection of harvesting of stories, I would like to question that. So if we have moved by stories and not by ideas, let's choose the stories we want to be moved by.
Yeah.
Let's question how we build ourselves through this, how ideologies are embedded in those stories, and also how this has changed through time. Because looking at, this is something maybe we will talk about later, just looking at how the perception of the story has been changed is also a reflection of how we have changed. So something as ordinary as potato is a reflection of our own way of constructing the world around us. So, yeah. So maybe you can listen to another one.
Yes, please. If you're ready, we are too.
Last autumn, I was visiting Jan in his potato field in Russell, on the border between Belgium and the Netherlands. He has been dedicating his life to the cultivation of the potato, and before that, his father and grandfather also did, because potato growing is a profession passed down through generations. During that period, I had been reading a lot about the history of potato. I was, and well, I am, so fascinated by the stories around it. Stories of dominance, displacement, survival, adaptation, and globalization. I was looking forward to meeting him and sharing our stories. We talk about the difficulties that the potato had to deal with to be accepted as a food crop in Europe. I told him about the specific case of Galicia, how the peasants start to cultivate it because of a plague of the chestnut, the basis of people's food at that time. He then offered to share with me the story he has always been told by generations about the introduction of the potato in the Netherlands. Of course, I was all ears. The most common way we see potatoes nowadays is in the form of tubers, but actually the flower of the potato plant is very beautiful. It has a geometric shape that reminds of a 5-pointed star. The color of the petals go from pure white to purple, like a nebulosa, and in the middle of each star there is a yellow spark, simulating the explosion of a supernova. Jan pointed to a photo of a flower that was hanging on the wall and said, "That beauty captivated Europeans, and when the potato arrived here, it began to be used as a decorative plant. The kings and queens used it to decorate the lapels of their costumes. Actually, the potato was already on the table, but not in the dishes, but in the centers of ornamental flowers. It was only appreciated by the superficial quality of the plant." But this situation changed, he claimed. One day, there was a fire in one of the orchards that surround the royal palace, where potatoes were also planted. The strong fire spread rapidly and destroyed everything. When the servants arrived to the scene, they were surprised by a pleasant smell, because the potato had been cooked with the heat generated by the fire. They identified potatoes as the region of such a perfume, a smell that went through their noses and reached their stomachs, generating in them a great desire to try the mysterious tuber. Jan took a potato from the arrangement that was decorating the table and said, "From that moment, the beauty of the potato was the one that was underground."
So yes, I think it really demonstrates how stories contribute to shape our ideas on how this can change through time. Because as I said before, like it was not accepted as a food crop when it arrives to Europe, but actually it was an essential thing in the ancient society, Indian society in Latin America. So it was like the basic. So because the potato has this ability, like you can get like a much more amount of potatoes in less land. Yeah. So somehow it guaranteed like the food sovereignty. But this knowledge, it was not transmitted, it was not accepted by the conquerors. They did not care about the knowledge behind the plant. So actually they just got the superficial view of the...
Yeah, the outside only, the pretty, what they saw. Not what they knew, but what they saw. Oh, it looks beautiful.
It really, I think, symbolizes somehow how we sometimes see things. Mm-hmm. Like we need to uncover. So we need to put our hands on the soil and then dig, and then you will find like the real treasure.
Yes.
Get in the superficial level.
Like they say, get your hands dirty. Get in the soil, get your hands dirty, do the works. Because I think this is very interesting how these are stories we hear, right? And I think it's very interesting indeed, the idea of we are moved by the stories indeed that we hear instead of the ideas. Because most of the time with an idea, there comes a story. And when you hear the story, you say, and then you relate and then you feel more of it. But how do you visualize these stories then? Because this is sound. Where does the visualization come into? Where does photography embrace and expands this project or these stories?
So the project combines the text. So what we have listened is some text I wrote based on my experience, then the audio I collect, and I invite everyone to send their stories if they have. Mm-hmm. And also like there is like the visual aspect. And the visual aspect is more like my own tangle of narratives. It's my personal experience where I configure this tangle of narratives, taking aspects from the cultural, from the social, and many from the emotional. A visual representation of all the narratives around the potato that cross myself in first person. And then it's combined. So it's an exchange with the audience. So I show them my stories through the visuals. And then like, I hope this could be like an input on them, so then give me their stories. So
okay.
This kind of participatorial. So I think if you want people to engage with your story, you also need to engage with them. So I think it's like this balance between, I feel comfortable using photography as a medium to do that, but I want them to give me back their stories. And so I use different material for the visual, like, as I said, like from vernacular photography or scientific. So it's really diverse, but I think always playing with the kind of symbolic background. Mm-hmm. I think it's easier maybe to get into sensibilities and somehow enhance a sense of belonging, of thoughts and feelings where you can easily move.
Where are you right now with this project? Is it a middle part? Is this ongoing, or is there an end stage you are trying to reach?
So the project starts between Colombia and Galicia. Then after moving to Netherlands, I started working on Dutch potato stories. And this is what is mainly I have been developing in Lighthouse. But then I realized that as the project has the ability to adapt to every place. Yeah. And example, now next month I will be in Ireland working on Irish potato stories. And I think like the potato stories are not going to end. So I will move with like the potato to every place and to start to continue like thinking on this idea of building ourselves through stories. And it reminds me now, like in the Latin Americas, there is like a movement in the 80s, like there was this idea of reconstructing the history, but not using like the
institutionalized
or academic perspective, but also involving like people, like general people. So I think somehow like we can all together in different countries, different places, reconstruct this history of potato that actually is our history. So yeah, so I think it's a non-ending project, and as soon as there will be like potatoes, it will exist.
And you travel with these stories and literally with the potato stories. What is it? How do the people react when you start these conversations with them? Or I can imagine that somebody will be. You all of a sudden realize that this is a very different conversation starter, and there's so much more underneath. So how do they react?
Yeah. So like for example, like it goes from sometimes it's kind of hard, the starting point, because I mean, many people just get, as we saw with the flower, to the superficial level, but sometimes not.
Yeah.
It makes people uncomfortable because it comes up like episodes of the history that maybe has not been treated.
Yeah.
For example, periods of hunger, of like, for example, in Ireland now, like how the British were pushing them, and it's something like has not been really solved and not talked. So through potato, suddenly they are confronting past that actually has not been. But there is always like kind of traumas behind.
Yeah.
Also, like I think this is the power of the potato. Like even if our strong topics, like it makes things more soft and more innocent. So you can easily move to these uncomfortable conversations without getting to attack.
As I am listening to you telling me, but also the stories, I myself am. I am. My mind is like exploring all these stories that all of a sudden I tie to the potato, or what I have heard, because now me myself, I am seeing the underlying, I don't know how to translate that, but I see the deeper conversation within it, and I also want to explore it more. I think this is very interesting.
Do you have a story or something like that's you would like to share
with potatoes? Or yeah, so much, because I absolutely love potato in all different ways. But the funny thing is, because as you talk, you said the power of potato, and at the same time, in my mind, it said, oh yeah, because I've seen some people, they say you can extract power out of a potato. But then if you put it in this context, like literally, you can extract power of the story that lies within. So then I hear power stories, or for example, a friend of mine, super random, but he has a painting of a pot of potatoes about to be cooked. So they're in the water. And I said to him, oh, what is this? Because it's typically Dutch. And he says, oh no, actually, I don't know why I have it, because I absolutely hate potatoes. And then I said, why do you hate potatoes? He said, yeah, because I don't know. And then I noted to him, like most of the people that I know who are white, said, nah, I don't like potatoes. My friends said, nah, I don't like potatoes. I said, yeah, okay, but let me make you potatoes. I make them different. So, yeah, because my mom used to make them and they were so yeah, I make, and then they say, okay, I like yours. So then I bring it to the kitchen, which tells me, the culture is different. So the way of preparing is different. So the spicing is different. And then we started having a conversation that started with that simple potato, where he started with, oh, it's something I dislike, but still you hang it there. And why do you do that? Because it still tells you something. So this is, I think I could find 10 stories without realizing that till we went into these potato stories. So I think this is indeed, it will never stop. You can always have conversations about these because these, as long as the potato is there, you could use these stories. You will have these stories.
Yeah, and actually, like as you mentioned now, like also like the cooking, the eating and the cooking, it always brings like a way of gathering. So always can be like excuse. So like for example, I was mixing recipes from Latin America and Spain, and then like giving to them. So like, look, like if we mix and we share our knowledge, and maybe the setting of eating and cooking is also like it's like, yeah, as we said, like there is much more power on that, like maybe introduce the idea. So by these small acts and by sharing knowledge as something ordinary as potatoes, we can maybe, be more efficient on these things.
Absolutely. I think so. And is there for you something completely new you have discovered about yourself within this journey that you're having?
Well, I think maybe that I also have to cure something in relation maybe to this colonial heritage that I was carry on. So maybe to confront that. Like my experience in Latin America opened my mind in things like I got from granted. So I think like confront to this past of my country, it was something really extremely important that actually, because you don't realize how all those things have shaped you, but actually they have.
Yeah.
They are integrated into very simple ideas, and sometimes you don't confront them because you don't even understand that they are there. So I think like this was in my personal case, like in between these two places were like, okay, where do I come from? What does it mean? And what implications do this have in the way I am? So I think this was, and I think like moving between like here, there, and like also with the excuse of the potato, I think like today, like a space or has not to be something geographically or politically, but I really believe there is a common space for stories and experiences. So I think like find your place, I think is find your place in a story. So I think this is what I have learned, like we need to question our stories and find the stories we want to be part of.
Yes, absolutely. And is there, for instance, always a connecting it to you being also a photographer, and if you have like an exposition about it, do you always want to have this big gathering where this all comes together? Visual, audio, the potato stories?
Yeah, so there are the visuals that, as I said before, works really like, because this mental images goes directly inside, but combined with the text. So I think it's usually when I show it in public, it's like a combination of all this. So I like this idea of like words can break images and images can break words, and then we combine all of them, and
then we have potato stories. Do you have more stories? Do you have more sounds to listen to, or are we going to wrap it up?
Yeah, so maybe I would like to finish with a story. A friend of mine who is a poet and is a farmer, and she wrote this after our conversations peeling potatoes. So we spent a lot of time peeling. Also, like this idea of peeling and uncovering, looking for the core of the things. Yeah. So after peeling, she wrote this poem, and I think it could be a nice end. It's in Galician, but I will transcript later, so you will have the chance to understand what is she saying.
Okay, it's good. So we're going to close it off with this poem actually developed while you were peeling potatoes and having a conversation with a friend. And I say let's listen.
No medio dunha espesa néboa, ollo máis salados miolos. Asoman á miña cabeza varias imaxes dun tesouro que temos por nós. A pataca. Será esta un signo de identidade cos humanos? En tempos moi antergos desprazou a castaña, tal e como os nosos descendentes nos desprazan a nós mesmos. Nembargantes é un lazo de unión entre dous grandes continentes, América, ali fican as súas raíces, e Europa, así como a cada un de nós somos entre nosos pais. Moi ensimesmada sigo cavilando. Maxino unha fada con aire misterioso sementándoa nun rego, onde ela, resgardada dentro da placenta da súa nai terra, vai formando o seu corpo, a súa pel, os seus ollos. Eses ollos profundos cheos de meigallo, e dos que pasado un tempo emerxerá unha nova vida. Vai medrando paseniñamente espertando o mundo, mais as súas raíces ficarán arraigadas a esta terra chea de meigallo, da que levará restos incrustados para sempre na súa pel. É o noso espello. Nel ollámonos a nos mesmos, a faciana, as engurras, en fin, o seu xeito de rular no mundo. Aloumiñámola e agarimámola na nosa man, para logo escomenzar a desnudala con calma e serenidade. Semella un cerebro viaxando no espazo, no que deixa un sendeiro cun gran rastro de recordos a través da súa viaxe. Seguimos dándolle voltas nas mans, sacándolle todas as vestimentas ata cadar o meollo. Ese núcleo perfecto, esa grandeza interna que lle dá firmeza ao corpo, mais ao acadar a completa desnudez, ficamos inmóviles, só queda o vacío. A grandeza existe, mas non se pode apalpar, é etérea.
Can you tell us, without having to translate the whole thing, can you tell us what is at the core of what the poem she just recited for us, for the people listening?
Yeah, so she reflects on this analogy of the potato and the humans, how the potato grows, because there is something really important, really poetic in the potato. So like from the potato, there will born new potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fruits and then come, never ends. So it's a cycle of never ending from one potato to the other. So she's also describing this action of peeling as a way to uncover, to us to be naked in front of things. So we peel the potato as we take our, we naked in a more metaphorical way. We all things we have covering us to get to the essence.
Nice.
Something like this.
Thank you. Anna, thank you so much for this very interesting conversation. And yes, please continue to gather these amazing stories so we can also listen to them, but also have them ourselves and be aware of the fact that we can have them. So thanks again for this beautiful insight.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes. And also thank you to everybody who is listening. And if you would like to follow the process of Anna, but also the other amazing artists, check the website of FOTODOK.org/Lighthouse and follow these amazing stories visually, but also in audio and in feeling. Thanks again for listening and hope to see you and hear you in next episode. Goodbye. This podcast is made possible by all people who have donated through our For de Kunst crowdfunding, FOTODOK, Bankgiro Loterijfonds, Prins Bernhard Cultuurfonds, For Henna Foundation, ABN AMRO Cultuurfonds, Ventener van Vlissingen Fonds, and KF Heijn Fonds.